Excited to know they would be safe because they were vaccinated. That's what we're going to be talking about every single day, vaccination. And starting next week, we'll be talking a lot more about parents having the opportunity to get their kids vaccinated, getting ready for school. The number one thing, and I want to say it to all parents, number one thing you can do to get your kids ready for school, it's not going and buying a backpack or pens or paper or any of that stuff. It's getting your kid vaccinated if they're not yet vaccinated and they're eligible. Now, we also spent time with some wonderful young people at the playground at the Edenwall houses, made a major announcement about fully funding all of the playgrounds and public housing all over the 5 boroughs that have been closed and needing repairs, and so much work that wasn't happening last year now will happen. Fully funding and fast-tracking the repairs of 83 playgrounds all over the 5 boroughs, obviously some of them right here in the Bronx. And that is going to be so good for our kids. The kids we saw were great, full of life. I want to thank their camp counselors who are doing great work with them this summer. We're going to make sure that playgrounds are fixed as quickly as possible, a lot of them for this summer, others after, but they're all going to be open. The money is there, the focus is there, the plan is there. Now, a lot more is happening in Bronx Week. Members of my administration are around the Bronx, making major announcements, good things happening. Yesterday, the Parks Department broke ground at the Wakefield Playground. Tomorrow, the Parks Department will be cutting ribbon for the Pulaski Park Sports Courts and Tot Lot. Saturday, the Parks Department will be cutting the ribbon for Echo Park. A lot of great things happening, a lot of investments in the Bronx, and it all helps us move forward with a recovery for all of us. I will also say, when you're in the Bronx, there's so many amazing things to do. There's a hell of a lot of good food, too. Yesterday, I was at Porto Salvo in Melrose, a beautiful, beautiful restaurant. If you like Italian food, another great Italian restaurant in the Bronx. I'm looking forward to going to Arthur Avenue soon as well. There is so much to like about the Bronx. There is so much beauty in the Bronx, and particularly the people of the Bronx, who are so extraordinary, so strong. I have a great admiration for the people of this borough. And all through this week, we're seeing it on display. And someone else I admire is leading this borough. And what I love about him is his passion for the Bronx, his passion for the people of the Bronx. We've done a lot of work together on behalf of working people. We're going to be doing some exciting things later in the week to help make sure that the great work he's done is remembered for a long time and has a lasting impact on the people of the Bronx, because for him it's been a labor of love for sure. My pleasure to introduce the Borough President of the Bronx, Ruben Diaz, Jr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that you've been here several days, you and your administration. To you, the chief and everyone else, let me just publicly welcome you to Borough Hall. We've been together the last several days. I'm glad that you and the entire City Hall administration is enjoying our borough, the food in our borough. To do this...
Johnny's Reef, brother. Johnny's Reef.
Yes, yes.
That was Monday. That was great.
Yeah, that was great. And to do this, it gives you a firsthand look and appreciation for all of the work that we're doing here. You're being informed by Bronxites as to all of the issues that of concern to them, and the fact that we want what the rest of New Yorkers want. We want safe streets, we want clean streets, and we've been hit by COVID pretty hard, but we're showing, and you can see our resiliency.
Yes,
and you rattled off some of the major projects. I'm proud to have partnered up with so many of them with you and your administration. If you see the construction going around, I know that a lot of people complain about the traffic and construction, but infrastructure is important. The Brooklyn-Sheridan interchange, you see housing development all over the place. You have cut a number of ribbons already this week. We have a big announcement too, but I don't want to give it away coming later this week. You were here a couple of weeks ago where we broke ground on the Hip Hop Museum.
Yes.
On the Hip Hop Museum, and that's going to be a destination point. It's going to create jobs. It's going to allow for us to celebrate that we are the birthplace of hip hop, that we are where the biggest genre of music was created. And let me just say this, I got to bust your chops a little bit. It doesn't go unnoticed, Mr. Mayor, that you chose a week when the New York Yankees are on a road trip to be here.
We had no knowledge of the Yankees' schedule. I want to deny any conspiracy whatsoever.
But I'm glad that you're enjoying our food. I saw you at the Botanical Garden. We're going to be together later on tonight. And, you know, there's so much work that needs to be done. The Bronx is here to help you and your administration push forward the agenda to make this city even stronger. So welcome, and we appreciate the fact that you're spending the week here.
Thank you. Listen, Borough President, thank you. And your staff has been great. I want to shout out your whole team. Been very welcoming and helped us set up a whole series of activities here in the Bronx, connecting with the people of the Bronx, delivering for the Bronx, which is crucial. And you're right, we have some very special activities coming up later in the week that are very, very dear to you and me, and we're looking forward to that. But something you said a moment ago, the Hip Hop Museum, that was a very special day. That was a very powerful day. And the Hip Hop Museum is going to be something that changes, I think, profoundly people's understanding of just how important the Bronx has been in the history of New York City. It is an indispensable borough. It is also, as we talked about yesterday, the place that so many of the people who kept New York City going through COVID were Bronxites, who kept this city going bravely, with tremendous resiliency, but also the history, the culture of the Bronx deserves a lot more attention. The Hip Hop Museum is going to be one of those things that really makes that happen. So,
and now
very proud.
To all that are viewing out there, please come and enjoy our borough. Just simply go to ilovethebronx.com, and you will see all of the calendar of events that we're having throughout the summer. Shameless plug, September 5th, we will have El Gran Combo, for those that like salsa, and another genre of music, El Gran Combo, playing at Orchard Beach, and it's free of charge.
Doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
You got Orchard Beach.
Yes.
You got City Island. You got Van Cortlandt Park. You got Arthur Avenue.
Yep.
You got Yankee Stadium. Okay, I'll say it. You got Yankee Stadium. You got amazing food of so many different cultures. You got the Hip Hop Museum happening, coming soon. I think there's a hell of a lot of special things happening in the Bronx.
Yes, and we welcome everyone. We again appreciate you and your entire team being here. And you know, good. By the way, Bronxites and those New Yorkers, get yourself vaccinated, get yourself tested. Let's do this all together so that we can enjoy every single corner of the city. But this week we're enjoying the Boogie Down Bronx.
You said it. Perfect segue. Perfect segue, because let's talk about vaccination. Borough President's entirely right. The key is vaccination. We can talk about so many other issues with COVID, but if we're not talking about vaccination, then we're not talking about the solution. You want a recovery, you need vaccination. Whatever it is, you want to enjoy life to the fullest, you need vaccination. So let's give the facts up to now. In New York City, this is a great number, 9,902,097 doses have been given. We're on the verge of 10 million. And the only way we're going to keep this recovery going is for more and more people to get vaccinated. Now, we've talked the last few days about mandates, and there's no question in my mind, mandates are a crucial part of the solution, and we'll keep working on those. But we also still believe in incentives. Incentives help immensely. Both go well together, in fact. So we are announcing a major new incentive that I think is going to be very, very appealing to New Yorkers. I know there's hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers ready to get vaccinated right now. Maybe they just need to focus a little more. And I'm sure they're feeling urgency at this moment, given what we see happen around us. So here's an announcement that I think will move a lot of people. Starting on Friday, we will provide at city-run vaccination sites, when you get your first dose of the coronavirus vaccine, when you get your first dose, you will get a $100 incentive. $100 for any New Yorker who goes to a city-run site to get vaccinated. We'll say thank you. We'll say we're really glad that you got vaccinated for yourself, for your family, for your community. And here's $100 to thank you for doing the right thing and to encourage people. And not only do you get the $100, you then qualify to be able to do everything else that's wonderful in this city, including the amazing concerts coming up. You can't go to those concerts unless you're vaccinated. We talked about the Central Park concert yesterday, 5 total concerts. We're going to be talking about the lineups for the Bronx and the other boroughs coming up. They're going to be amazing, but the only folks who get to go are folks who are vaccinated. So, starting Friday, get vaccinated, get that first dose, get qualified to be able to go to all sorts of amazing things, and get a $100 incentive. It does not get better than that. All right, now, the fight against COVID continues. The focus on vaccination continues. That's how we're going to build our recovery. But the recovery also requires a focus on public safety. We've talked about this a lot. Public safety equals recovery. Recovery equals public safety. The more recovery, the safer our streets get. The more the life in New York City returns, the more people come back to all the things we knew, the safer we get. Our police leaders will tell you that. But we got to keep working on safety all the time for the good of all and to bring back this city fully. And that's been especially true in the Bronx. There's been real challenges in the Bronx, but there's also tremendous resiliency in the Bronx. There are folks all over the Bronx working with the police to make things better. There are folks all over the Bronx creating community-based solutions to violence. Amazing stuff is happening here. We want to talk about that today. So the bottom line is before the summer began, we laid out a vision, Safe Summer NYC. We talked about those investments in communities, Cure Violence Movement, crisis management system, a variety of efforts to reach down to the community level, solve violence before it happens. We talked about our court system, needing to get that back fully. We've made a lot of progress, but there's still more to do. We still need the state to lean in and get the courts back 100%, but we're getting there. And we talked, of course, about cops, the investments in making sure that cops were in the right places, precision policing, a focus on gun arrests. All of these strategies were put in place. And guess what? These strategies are working. Gun arrests up 43% year to date compared to last year, 43%. This is a tribute to the men and women of the NYPD. And you're going to hear from two leaders of the NYPD, but I want to take a moment to thank the cop on the beat. I want to thank all of the everyday NYPD officers, the detectives, the NCOs, everyone out there making a difference. You should be very, very proud of the fact that gun arrests have gone up so much. Every single gun arrest makes people safer. Also, important to note, in the last month, comparing this last month with the same month a year ago, we see some real change. We see some real improvement. Shootings down 36% compared to the same time period in 2020. In the past month, in that last month, murders are down compared to the same time in 2020 and 2019. This is about the work of the NYPD, the heroic work of the NYPD. It's also about growing connection between the NYPD and community members. Chief Harrison's talked about this a lot. A lot of the best ways to stop crime and solve crime is with that careful, close working relationship with communities. That is growing all the time. Now, we got a lot more to do, we know, a whole lot more to do, especially to overcome the perfect storm we went through last year with COVID. And we know the Bronx has had particular challenges, and we have to take them head on. But I want to give everyone some confidence with what we've experienced in the last few months in Brooklyn North. And Brooklyn North, anyone who follows safety issues in the city knows that Brooklyn North has been one of the areas for decades with some of the biggest challenges. But this plan, the Safe Summer Plan, had a very big impact in Brooklyn North. I want to give you a quote from an op-ed by District Attorney Eric Gonzalez of Brooklyn that was in the Daily News this week. He said, "In Brooklyn, where I serve as a chief law enforcement officer, homicides, shootings, and other serious crimes are declining compared to last year, and time-tested strategies to further reduce the violence have been working." That is a tough place for these strategies to be applied, and it worked. We're going to take the same strategies, deepen the effort here in the Bronx. It can be done, it will be done, a focus on gang takedowns, a focus on even more gun arrests, a focus on precision policing, deepening community engagement, working with Cure Violence and crisis management system. All of these pieces make a profound impact. I want you to hear from our chief of department, who has been meticulously organizing these strategies to make sure they have an impact and is laser focused on the needs of the people of the Bronx to keep them safe. Chief of Department, Rodney Harrison.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having me. Before I get started, if you don't mind, I got to take a moment to acknowledge Jason Savino. He's at the other end of the table. Jason Savino is a guru when it comes to gang violence. He's getting promoted Friday to Deputy Chief. Jason, congratulations and well-deserved, as well as to all the promotees that are getting promoted on this Friday. I just want to make sure I give you a nice acknowledgement on this platform to say congratulations and well-deserved. Mr. Mayor, I also want to talk about the Bronx police officers. You know, you just take a look at the Bronx cops under the leadership of Kenny Lair and Tim McCormick. Not only they're the best police officers in the city, but maybe in the country, and they're going to make sure that we turn around the violence that we're seeing throughout the city. So if I just real quickly just go into my written remarks, I just want to talk about some of the numbers that we see in the city. We have 876 shootings for the year to date. 283 of those shootings are in the Bronx, which accounts for 32% of the city's shooting incidents year to date. 54 of those shooting incidents have resulted in a fatality. In the areas where we're seeing the greatest increase in gun violence is in the 4-0 precinct, which is in Melrose, 4-2 precinct, which is the Tremont section, 4-3 precinct, Soundview, the 4-4 precinct in Morris Heights, the 4-6 precinct in University Heights, and in the 4-7, which is in Eastchester area. The main cause for the uptick in violence is youth gangs and youth violence. So far this year, we see 29% of our shooting victims are under the age of 18 years old. And many of these victims, unfortunately, have an affiliation with a gang. But year to date, the Bronx cops have made 682 gun arrests. That's compared to 467 made last year. We have not seen those types of numbers since 1996. Public housing, NYCHA, is unfortunately where some of our gun violence and gang-related violence is taking place. This year alone, gun violence in public housing is up 109%. 46 shootings in the Bronx originated on NYCHA property. And despite the overall increase in gun-related incidents in the Bronx, our hardworking detectives have kept pace throughout the city. 33% of the shootings have been solved by the Bronx detectives, who are the greatest detectives in the world. And that's a compliment to Tim McCormick, the younger brother, who's doing a great work regarding the leadership out in the Bronx. And this is directly connected to the community relations that we're building in the Bronx, to foster particularly in the areas of concern, to make sure we have those relationships so people are willing to come forward to help us solve a lot of these crimes. So this is what we're going to be doing. This is going to be the full court press. We have all-out officers. We've taken 150 administrative officers and put them in our areas of concern in the 4-0 precinct, the 4-4 precinct, and the 4-8 precinct, as well as PSA 7. We've also taken another 150 police officers throughout the city and put them in our areas where we're seeing a lot of gun violence as well, just to have that omnipresence, just to make sure that people feel safe walking the streets. We have our police officers at nighttime in our areas of concern, driving around with those turret lights. That's definitely a deterrent, and we've seen it work throughout the city. One of the most successful strategies that have brought down crime in the city have been gang takedowns. And Jay Savino is going to talk about that in a moment. That's going to be something that we're going to utilize our precision policing, going after the worst of the gang members, making sure we take them off the streets. Working with our local and state federal prosecutors, we're precision focusing on specific gang members that are causing the problems. We need the public's help. We need the public to talk about the concern of our local district attorneys and how we're going to make sure we prosecute individuals and make sure anybody that discharges a firearm is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. There are many gangs in New York City that are profiting from ancillary-related crimes like drugs and prostitution. And we've deployed our violent crime squad, our vice squad, our firearm suppression units to make sure that these gang members don't prosper from these types of crimes. And if I can add a bigger perspective, the Bronx in the last 6 weeks has been down 12 shootings versus last year, as well as in May, The Bronx had 62 shootings in June, 54 shootings, and in the month of July, they've had 44 shootings. Now, I will say this, one shooting is too many, but I'm very optimistic just seeing the trend that we're headed in the right direction. And lastly, I want to remind the public, we could use your assistance, we could use your help. If there's anything that you see of violence, please call our hotline at 1-800-577-TIPS. We raised our monetary reward to $3,500, and we could use your assistance to help some of these investigations and close out some of these shooting arrests. I'm now going to pass it over to Jason Savino.
Hey, but wait 1 second. Wait 1 second. Jason Savino, I just want to emphasize, who's done a great job as the commander of the Gun Violence Suppression Division, on Friday will be promoted to deputy chief. And that's a great tribute to the work you've done to keep New Yorkers safe. So I just want to formally congratulate you, and we welcome your comments.
I appreciate that, and I'll echo that sentiment. Thank you both. It's a true honor just to sit amongst our team, and to Chief Harrison directly, you've been a mentor of mine since our days back in Brooklyn.
That's right.
And certainly, it's an absolute honor to hold the torch that you provided me, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start by saying, I have a special place in my heart for the Bronx. Born and raised just outside the Bronx in Yonkers. Foot cop, transit cop, started out in the Bronx, went full circle as a lieutenant. So, when it comes down to boroughs, and I hope everybody's not offended, but when it comes to flavor, when it comes to just pizzazz and charisma, the Bronx is top notch. So I'll start with that. So good morning to everybody. I'm Inspector Jason Savino, Commanding Officer of Gun Violence Suppression Division. Our division ultimately builds cases against gang members, those that are willing to carry a gun. We're talking about that real small percentage, if you will, that willingly endanger our great community, the great people in our communities. Our team consists of over 200 investigators that pride themselves in creating pristine cases. And I'm so thankful and blessed that our investigators consider the members of our community kind of like family. We take our mission tremendously personal, and protect our public certainly to the best of our ability. Now, we have to note that the members of our team certainly kept and maintained boots on the ground, not only throughout the pandemic, but through so many other challenges that we faced. Our members never slowed for a second. It certainly shows that NYPD always performs at the highest level. Let's get into our mission. So I think the best way to describe exactly what we do is we have the best of the best, really looking at and monitoring the worst of the worst. We utilize our next level of precision policing policies and really address geography, the ripe subjects. You have to consider, even amongst gangs, there's only a few trigger pullers. The real alphas of the gang, those individuals that have the gall and the disregard to pull a trigger, there's still only a few. These are the individuals we build cases around. The crews we investigate are those, once again, the few individuals that make it uncomfortable and downright dangerous for all the great people in our neighborhoods, in our communities, who without remorse really carry firearms and create an uncomfortable quality of life for all, that only the worst of the worst can create. No true regard for anybody in and around them. We actually see on video and surveillance throughout our cases, residents doing all they can just to avoid these subjects. Everybody in the community knows exactly who they are, the bad guys that truly create the adverse living conditions that I'm speaking of. Not to mention these subjects that we investigate are willing to pull a trigger. Why do they pull a trigger? Exclusively to benefit their respective gang. And I say respective very loosely. Even to go so far to take a life. Now, sometimes even bragging thereafter about such. We know bullets have no names, a theme we have tragically seen far too many times. Now, to combat this, we dedicate such tremendous effort, and our team is absolutely relentless in tackling gun violence. Always doing everything we can to protect our community. It's our community, where all work is one. Now, the work we have performed, we feel has made a significant impact, reducing shootings. And we're starting to see that citywide, as you noted earlier, Mr. Mayor. Violence is trending downwards, and we're happy to see it. And we feel that our investigations and takedowns really have a direct correlation of decreasing these incidents. Case in point, you mentioned Brooklyn North earlier. So since late December, our gun violence suppression team has initiated 6 gang takedowns, 6 since December, 5 of which that have occurred since May 5th, resulting in the apprehension of 87 total individuals. And once again, we're talking about the true trigger pullers. Almost every one of them has pulled the trigger at least once. These are the individuals that are endangering our public. And just to show the effectiveness of our takedowns, we'll go right to Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. You know, 2 takedowns of the 6 affected that area. Now, when you look at 2020 versus 2019, that area experienced over 100% increase in shootings, where you're talking 52 shootings to over 100. You know, significant increase. Now, that same area, when you look at after May 5th, is down 50%. And we feel that our takedowns directly contributed to that. Now, all of our cases parallel each other in that they address, once again, the core groups, the worst of the worst in the entire city. Again, next level precision policing. Our gun violence suppression division, these cases that we initiate are far reaching and protecting the entire city. The best part is there's more to come. We have some real promising active investigations right here in the Bronx. And while I'm not really at the liberty to speak about the semantics and the particulars of them, we do expect very similar results in the future. So super optimistic, and can't wait to tell all the great people in the public our outcomes. Let me finish with this, if I will. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, Chief, I'll echo your sentiment. I'd be remiss if I didn't offer thanks really to our community, and so sincerely. This is why we became cops. And that's a sentiment our entire team feels. Let me repeat, this is why we became cops. The community called, we answer, and together we can reduce violence. Thank you.
Inspector, that was a beautiful way to put it all together, and I thank you. You spoke passionately and powerfully, and I could also tell how much you love the Bronx, and I appreciate that for sure. Yonkers is good, too. We got Yonkers best, and we brought him to the Bronx. I like it. But listen, thank you, and congratulations again, and that is an exceptional report that shows we always got a lot to do, but we got the tools to do it with, and people out there doing amazing work. And speaking of the effort to make the Bronx safer every day, I want you to hear from the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the Bronx. She has distinguished herself by combining all the tools of course effective prosecution, but also constant work with communities, with clergy, with local leaders, with the Cure Violence Movement, crisis management system, all the pieces coming together. That's what the district attorney believes in, and that's what she's put into action here in the Bronx. My pleasure to introduce District Attorney Darcel Clark.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and welcome back to the Bronx. It's wonderful to have you here. To my borough president, I'm so proud of him, of his 12 years. It's a great thing. Chief Harrison, thank you so much for your partnership. I hear your passion in the work that we're trying to do here in the Bronx. And Inspector Savino, we could not do this without you and your team. So thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Mayor, public safety is a #1 priority, and we're doing it from every corner of the Bronx and in every way that we can. And when you brought about the Safe Summer program, it dovetailed completely with my strategic plan of Bronx Peace, which is precision enforcement and community engagement. And we've been doing both. So these shootings have been a priority. We're happy that it's going down, but we need more help, and NYPD has been ready, willing, and able to do that. Big ups to Chief Lear as well as Chief McCormick. They are working so well with my team to make sure that we bring about the best prosecutions that we can. And that clearance rate is just going to go up, because at the end of the year, the Bronx is always at the top of the food chain as far as clearances are concerned. So we're going to continue to do that work. I have dedicated experienced, seasoned assistant district attorneys to be assigned to these shootings, so that whatever NYPD needs in part of their investigation, they have a lawyer already ready, willing, and able to execute search warrants, whatever it is that they need in order to make the investigation great. And we are looking at the gangs, and we're looking at, in particular, those trigger pullers. But we can't do it also without the community. They have marched with me each and every day throughout the very streets where the shootings are actually happening. So I'm glad to have the partnership with the crisis management teams and the cure violence groups. All of them in the Bronx have helped me in a number of ways. The clergy is so very important because they are also meeting people where they are, as well as the businesses. You know, we have a program called Bronx Cams where we have registered all of the NYCHA cameras, and I thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the city is making sure that we get those cameras fixed because that's the evidence that we use, as well as private business owners and building owners who are allowing us to see their video as part of the work that we have to do. So we're all in this together. And at the end of the day, it means keeping the Bronx safe. You're talking about the uptick in youth violence, gang violence, and those victims being so young. We also have to give our young people something to do. We have to give them an alternative to violence. And Mr. Mayor, you have helped with that. We kicked off Saturday Night Lights, 100 gyms in New York City, 25 in the Bronx now, where young people can go. I have been at a number of ribbon cuttings where you have refurbished basketball courts. Those are the things that we need to continue to do. Play streets. I'm working with the PAL or PAL, and the Yankees are doing something together. So we're going to continue to do this on all fronts. And most importantly, for those victims of the crime to know that my office is ready, willing, and able to give them whatever assistance as well. We need the community's help, and those who are courageous enough to come forward to help us solve these crimes and really remove these people who are causing that much the violence in our community. We have therapists, we have advocates, we can move them. I have a number of resources for people who are witnesses and victims to the crime. You are not alone. If you don't call a hotline, call us. We will be there. I'll send somebody out to make sure that you're safe. And then I want to say something else too. And people don't usually do this, but I want to speak to the families of the young people. I'm talking about those gang members who are making the bad decisions. They have families, and their families are being judged for the wrongdoing that their particular children or loved one is doing. I care about them too because they're struggling as well. And they need to know that there are places that they can go to try to get help for that young individual in their family before they decide to pick up that gun. So I'm speaking to them as well. If they need help, if they feel lost because they lost a job or they're working 2 or 3 jobs and they can't supervise their kids or their family members, come see us as well. I can be helpful to them as well because, and Mr. Mayor, I know you have several resources in the city that can do that. We need to speak to those families as well because they need help as well. And if we can get to them, they can get to their kids. And that's another way for us to solve this. So I'm happy to be a partner with this. Chief Harrison, thank you so much for your support and dedication to the Bronx. Inspector Savino, so much work that you've done, we will continue to do. And I assure you, you are going to see some very good results now that we are concentrating in the Bronx as well.
Thank you so much, District Attorney. Your passion is clear, and we love it. And I thank you for it, the way you go out there every day with passion to protect the people of the Bronx. I especially appreciate what you were saying about families. You're right. If a young person's going in the wrong direction, we need to work with that family. We need to interrupt that cycle in a variety of ways. And we're going to use every tool. That's what ceasefire is all about, which is something Chief Harrison and I have talked a lot about. How do we get there first and intervene? The NYPD's focus on youth. This is all about being proactive. And it's also about the community-based solutions to violence. And later on today, I will be with an amazing group, Release the Grip, a part of Bronx Connect, a wonderful cure violence crisis management system group making a huge difference because the community-based solutions are one of the big X factors here, stopping violence before it happens, intervening at the community level. We're going to be up there with them, celebrating their work, supporting their work. It's another way we move the Bronx forward. Okay, before we go to the media, let's do some indicators for today. Very much the pattern we've been talking about lately. We see some things that are worrisome, and we also, thank God, still see pretty good numbers overall on the hospital side. So number one, daily number of people admitted to New York City hospitals for suspected COVID-19. Today's report is 108 patients, confirmed positivity 21.05. The hospitalization rate per 100,000, 0.56. Number two, new reported cases on a 7-day average. Again, this is the part we don't like so much. Today's report, 929 cases. And number three, percentage of people testing positive citywide. We'll be talking again this number going forward. This is less important as we go along. Today's average 7-day rolling average 2.55%. And then I want to just offer a few words in Spanish and go back to the $100 vaccine incentive. And this is really important news. I want to make sure we spread it in every language to get the maximum number of people vaccinated. A partir del viernes, le daremos $100 para ponerse la vacuna en uno de los sitios administrados por la ciudad. Así es cuanto su ciudad quiere mantenerle a salvo. Salgan y póngase la vacuna. With that, let's turn to our colleagues in the media. And please let me know the name and outlet of each journalist.
We'll now begin our Q&A. As a reminder, we're joined today by Chief of Department Rodney Harrison, by Inspector Jason Savino, the commander of the Gun Violence Suppression Division, by EDC President Rachel Loeb, by Dr. Mitchell Katz, and by Dr. Dave Choksi. First question today goes to Andrea Grimes from WCBS.
Hi, good morning. Thank you guys for taking my question. I had others, but given the news you guys just shared, this question, I guess, is for the DA, and if any of the NYPD brass want to chime in, specifically on prosecutions, where you say more than the police have made over 680 gun arrests. Or are those arrestees back out on the streets? Can you talk a little bit about the prosecution of these cases?
Let me see if the DA is still on. No, unfortunately, the DA is not on the line, Andrea. We'll have Chief Harrison speak to this for sure. But to say we'll also have our team connect you with the DA after. But look, let's be clear. I really want to thank DA Darcel Clark because she's been a great partner. We need constant and aggressive gun prosecution. We also need the court system at full strength. There's been a lot of progress on the gun prosecutions and the court proceedings in terms of gun violence. We want to keep building on that. We want to see the courts open up for a whole range of prosecutions because that atmosphere of consequence is really vital. That's one of the things we missed deeply in 2020. Too many people thought there weren't consequences. Now we see more and more people who did the wrong thing suffering the consequences, and that's having a good chilling effect on gun violence. But it does come down to quality prosecution. And Chief Harrison, in terms of how we keep that momentum up, what you're doing to make sure that happens, why don't you speak to that?
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, I kind of want to echo what you just stated. It's very important that people that carry illegal firearms are held accountable. It's a rippling effect. It sets a tone in the streets. That's why Jay Savino's team is so imperative to this organization to make this a safer city. That's the first thing. And I also want to make sure I acknowledge not just our partnership with Darcel Clark, but all the district attorneys in the other 4 boroughs to let it be known we're going to continue to work extremely hard to identify individuals that are carrying legal firearms and make sure they are not only held accountable, but stay in custody for the time that they're supposed to. Regarding the numbers that you asked, I apologize. I don't have the numbers regarding how many people are out, but I will say this, one is too many, and we're going to continue to work hard with the district attorneys and make sure that anybody that carries a legal firearm is apprehended and brought to justice.
Thank you. Go ahead, Andrea. Andrea?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Separately on schools, Scott Stringer's office today releasing what they're saying is a damning report on thousands of kids who didn't have electronic devices. There's parents who want the remote option still for September. And then separately, there's a hearing this morning about parents who sued for full-time learning for all students. Can you just speak to that and the devices and your reaction to the lawsuit of full-time full-time learning for everybody.
I got a very broad briefing. I've not read the controller's report. I got a very broad briefing, but I think one of the issues is when was the information gathered by the controller's team, because the distribution of devices happened constantly. By the time we got through the whole school year, over 500,000 devices had been given out, and any student who requested one got one. Sometimes there were delays in supply, but usually not for long. So we'll look at that report, but I think it is missing the core point that a vast and historic number of devices were given out for free and constantly. We're going into the new school year in strong position, and we added money in the budget to get even more just to make sure it was absolutely universal. We are definitely bringing back school full strength. That's the bottom line. We are committed to making sure our kids get a chance to recover from this horrible time they've been through. We're going to do academic screening to get every child back on track academically, mental health screening to help them deal with the trauma of what they've been through. We're bringing all our kids back, and we can do that in a safe way and a way that's really going to help them. So that's the bottom line of where we stand.
The next is Juliet from 1010 Wins.
Oh, hey, good morning, all. Mr. Mayor, this is about the CDC guidelines for mask wearing for all indoors. Are you planning to adopt that?
We are assessing the new information from the CDC right now. We got it less than 24 hours ago, and it is complicated information, so our health team's reviewing it, and we'll have more to say on it in the next few days. Go ahead, Juliet.
Okay, and I'm wondering if the doctors on the call today can weigh in on their concerns over the mutation of the Delta variant. There are other health experts that say it could turn into an even more infectious strain. What are you seeing as far as the trend on Delta, and where do they think it's going?
I'll preface, and I'll turn to Dr. Choksi and Dr. Katz, but I want to preface with very good and important question, Juliet, but I want to remind everyone of all the previous times where a new strain emerged, a new variant emerged, and there was real and profound concern each time, of course. And what the doctor said every single time is the one thing that addresses this is vaccination. Every single time. Vaccination was the difference maker. Vaccination is still the difference maker. So we need to keep educating the public as we get more information, but the answer is the same. The song remains the same every single time. It's vaccination, and we have got to lean into vaccination. So again, more and more mandates coming, and incentives like the one we announced today. We're going to use every tool in the toolbox, but even with each new development, the answer keeps coming back to vaccination. Go ahead, Dr. Choksi.
Thank you very much, sir, and thanks for the question about the Delta variant. Here's what we know about Delta thus far. We know it is a more contagious strain. As we've described previously, this means that it is easier to transmit and spread among people. This is particularly true if one is unvaccinated. We also know in New York City that at least 3/4 of cases are attributable to the Delta strain. So it's the dominant variant in New York City, and that's true across the United States as well. What do we do about this? The key point is what the mayor said. At both the individual level and the population level, vaccination is the key. Vaccines help individuals protect themselves as well as their families. But very importantly, with respect to other strains that may develop, the key in interrupting that is vaccination as well. That's why we need to spread it as broadly as possible, both for Delta and to prevent other strains from emerging in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Katz.
I want to add for lay people, the reason that vaccination helps us is because what causes the creation of new variants is the virus reproducing in people. And so by vaccinating, we're preventing the virus from reproducing, and that's the best way for us to prevent future variants. I also want to emphasize that while we are seeing breakthrough cases, we're not seeing people getting sick. The vaccines are working. That is what we should focus on. The concerns about COVID are the horrible loss of fellow New Yorkers due to illness. We are not seeing that in vaccinated people. We are continuing to see that in unvaccinated people. We are continuing to see respiratory distress, the need to provide people with ventilators, and deaths among the unvaccinated. And that has to be our focus, is saving lives by getting everyone vaccinated. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
The next is James Ford from Pix 11.
And good morning, Mr. Mayor, and everyone on the call.
Good morning, James. How are you feeling today?
Very well. Thank you for asking. I'd like to ask more about this $100 incentive, please. Are we talking a cash payment? And why do you feel that this incentive might be more effective than the many that have been offered by you in the past?
On the mechanics, I'm going to turn to Rachel Loeb, who's president of the Economic Development Corporation. They've been playing an absolutely fantastic role in creating all of the incentives connected to our vaccination program from the beginning, and she'll explain how this one's going to work. But I want to say, James, we worked with different incentives, and we found some had a positive impact, but I personally believe the guarantee that right then and there, you're going to be rewarded. I think that's going to make a big difference to people. Again, I know, the doctors will tell you this, there are a huge number of New Yorkers open to vaccination. Just haven't quite gotten there. I think when someone says, here's $100 for you, that's going to make a big impact, particularly in a world in which more and more things are going to be determined by whether you're vaccinated or not. That's where things are going. So we want to just supercharge it by saying we'll give you extra, direct, personal incentive to get this done now. Rachel Loeb, will you please explain how it works?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. So this program that we are announcing today and will be live on Friday is eligible for New York City residents and employees. It's quite simple. You go to www.vax4nyc.nyc.org to find the qualifying sites, and you'll be issued a $100 prepaid debit card. If you have an email address, you can redeem it immediately, and you can be issued a digital card. You can even get it while you're waiting during your observation period. If you don't have an email address, a physical card will be mailed to you at an address entered when you book your appointment. After you get your first dose, you go back to the same website, Dash Incentives, and you choose your $100. So we're really excited. We're partnering with Akimbo, which is a very experienced organization that we worked with before to distribute COVID relief via prepaid cards. And so again, it's live today, ready to disperse on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, James.
I guess a follow-up to that, what do you say to New Yorkers who needed no incentive to get vaccinated and now are looking at other people getting a $100 debit card?
I say anyone who got vaccinated previously, I'm one of those people. Congratulations, you got vaccinated, you were protected from COVID, it was free, it was the right thing to do for yourself, for your family, for your community. You did the right thing. And the reward is you were kept safe, and you're alive because of it. But we understand, there's been a huge amount of misinformation. Let's be very clear, James. We're not dealing in a vacuum here. It's been horrible misinformation provided, fear-stoked, people, particularly through social media, getting anything but the truth. We've got a lot we got to overcome. Amazingly, at this hour, despite all the misinformation, 4.9 million New Yorkers have received at least one dose. That's over 59% of the entire population of the city. 4.7 million adults, that's 71% of all adults in New York City have received at least one dose. The overall situation, we are doing better than the United States of America as a whole. But that misinformation, that fear has hurt. And what's in all of our interests is to get every single additional person vaccinated. So if this is one of the tools that gets there, that is in the interest of all the people in New York City.
The next is Yoav from the city.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to ask you about the Department Advocate's Office at the NYPD. There was a report by an independent panel that said they were short by at least 10 attorneys. And last I heard in November 2020, the NYPD said it was looking to hire these attorneys, but that they were waiting on funding from the city. Has that funding been provided? Can you or anyone from the PD say that?
Yeah, Yoav, I do believe it has been. I want to double check, and I'll have the team get back to you today, but I believe the last conversation I had, which was before the budget was done in June, this was absolutely approved. We need that office to have the attorneys it needs. I think it's in the budget. If for any reason there's an issue, we'll resolve it right away. Go ahead, Yoav.
Okay, thanks for that. And apologies if this has been asked. I haven't seen that it has in recent weeks, but what's the status of the city's emergency declaration executive order, particularly when it comes to contracting? Obviously, the comptroller filed a lawsuit questioning the necessity. Where do things stand, and why do you still feel that it's necessary?
It isn't necessary anymore. The fact is we made clear that we had some final work to be done. Obviously, we're still fighting COVID, so there was some final work to be done. That work was done. We're not working with those emergency rules anymore at this point. I hope and pray they will not be needed again.
The next is Jeff Mays from the New York Times.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for taking my question.
How are you, Jeff?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. I wanted to ask about the new guidance from the CDC. I mean, you said it was complicated, but just looking at the guidance, what they basically said is that in areas of high transmission, masks should be worn indoors, even by people who've been vaccinated. I'm wondering what's so complicated about that, and given that simple guidance, why delay the decision on mandates on requiring masks?
We're assessing the information. What really is important is to assess the research behind it, which is what our team is doing. And we've got to make sure we understand the ramifications and what makes sense to do. The CDC is providing guidance. It's up to each locality now to make sense of it, and that's what we're working on right now. Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm wondering if Dr. Chosky or Dr. Katz could answer that same question.
Yeah, and we've spoken at length about this, and I'll turn to both of them. But again, I want to emphasize, we got this less than 24 hours ago. We really want to make sure we've looked at all of the issues, all the ramifications, the research, to figure out what it means and the right way to handle it. It's up to each locality to take the information and determine how best to use it. And the other thing that we all are going to say is that's something we're going to work on, but nothing compares to vaccination in terms of how we strategically address COVID. So our number one focus by far is on vaccination. Go ahead, Dr. Katz, then Dr. Chokshi.
I'm happy to start, Mr. Mayor. While the CDC issued their guidance yesterday at about 3 p.m., they have not yet released their scientific reports on the data that underlies their recommendation. I think that we owe it to New Yorkers to very carefully, as you say, review that information and understand its implications. Our focus has to be on getting people vaccinated. That is how we are going to save lives, and that's what I think all of us want to focus all of our energy on. Thank you, sir.
Cool, thank you. Dr. Chokshi.
Thank you, sir, and I agree. We do have to carefully review, as I said yesterday, not just the guidance itself, but also the science that underpins it. And we will do that carefully and apply it in the context of of New York City. I know there has been a lot of focus on the masking component of the guidance. I did want to highlight that the CDC also made a very strong statement about how vaccination is the key public health intervention that we have at this stage of the pandemic. And they shared important information. For example, the risk of infection is 3.5-fold lower for vaccinated people compared to unvaccinated. Risk of getting ill from COVID is over 8-fold lower, and the risk of hospitalization or death is over 25-fold lower. These are incredibly important components of what the path forward is for New York City, and why you have heard that our laser focus is and will remain on vaccination.
Thank you.
The next is Matt Chase from Newsday.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Matt, haven't heard your voice in a while. How you doing?
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm doing it right. I had a question for Dr. Chok. You've been asked several times on these calls how many coronavirus reinfections the city has counted, but you've never given the actual number. What is that number?
Hey, Jeff, Matt, I want to ask and make sure I get this right. Say it because your voice was a little low. Say exactly what you're asking again.
Certainly. Yeah, I'm asking for the number of coronavirus reinfections that the city has counted.
Reinfections.
So in other words, so someone had coronavirus, not vaccinated, but had coronavirus, and was reinfected with the virus. What's that number of folks who were in
Dr.
that
Choksi, do
situation?
you have that, or do you need to get it back to Matt?
We can follow up on that. What I've stated in the past is that it is a relatively small proportion, meaning reinfection is possible, but relatively uncommon. It is something that we track, but part of the reason that it is a difficult analysis is that sometimes a repeat positive test does not equal a reinfection because of some nuances related to the PCR tests and their sensitivity. So I'm happy for us to follow up in greater detail about what we are tracking and what it tells us about reinfection.
Thank you. Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, for you, Mr. Mayor, you used the analogy of New York City being on a ladder. Will that ladder extend to mandatory vaccines for school children 12 and up, or are you going to follow the status quo policy?
We are constantly looking at the data and the science, Matt. We're going to look at how everything evolves. What makes sense to do, what's effective, what's going on in terms of the permanent authorization of the vaccine. There's a lot of factors here. Right now, I believe the proactive efforts, I mean, again, we're almost to 10 million vaccinations, so let's give credit to everyone who did that work and everyone who stepped forward to get vaccinated. That was huge. That's the reason we're in the middle of a recovery. We wouldn't be in a recovery otherwise. Now we're going to provide an additional incentive. We think that $100 incentive is going to make a big difference to a lot of people. We're going to have a huge drive over the coming weeks to get parents and school kids vaccinated. And I think that's going to be natural for a lot of parents to bring their kids forward in anticipation of school. All of these things are going to add up in addition to the mandate we've placed on our public employees. But we're going to be ready to keep climbing that ladder depending on the results and what's going on overall, and as we innovate new tools. So stay tuned.
We've got time for two more for today. The next is Yehudit from Borough Park 24 News.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
I'm doing great, Yehudit. How are you?
Good, great. So on June 30th, when you discussed the budget, you said that you would be prioritizing $200 million to the NYPD to upgrade its technological capabilities. I'm wondering whether now is the time that the long-time plan to digitally encrypt police radios will come to fruition, and whether the media, as it has since the 1930s, will continue to have unfiltered, unsanitized access to be able to report police-related news.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to turn to Chief Harrison to see if he has updates. Obviously, we believe in the media having the ability to get the information they need, and we want the best technology for the NYPD. In terms of the specifics, let's see if Chief Harrison has that. Otherwise, we'll get someone back to you later on today.
Yeah, so first and foremost, thank you for your question. And
a little louder.
First and foremost, thank you so much for your question. And yes, technology is extremely important in order for us to keep this city safe. Regarding the direction regarding being able to share the technology and as well as getting more funding for it, I'm going to have to get back to you, but I will say this. It's an important component for us to be able to use whatever technology we can get to identify some of these individuals that are committing some of these crimes. So I'm looking forward to going forward and using whatever technology and resources we can get to apprehend individuals.
Great. And Yehudit, we'll have our team follow up on some of the specifics with you after this. And now you get a second question.
Okay, thank you. And so Vermont State Health Commissioner, Dr. Mark Levine, I read this morning on CNN, said that Vermont, which is 83% vaccinated, I think the state with the highest vaccination rate, he said his strategy is we want a Vermonter to essentially stumble on the vaccine. If you're at one of the beaches, on the street, at a state fair, at a flea market, you're going to see vaccine tents. We're going to make sure you see it all around you. I know it is a lot of work and funding for the health department, but I was wondering what you and your health care team thinks about flooding the city with vaccines, hence people and information there to debunk the misinformation, and maybe $100 also to make getting vaccinated kind of unavoidable for New Yorkers.
Well, I think it's a great question and a great concept. I would caution, and I love the state of Vermont deeply. I've spent a lot of time there. I believe, there's more people in Vermont than there are people in Staten Island, but not a lot more. And when they talk about those gatherings, that's a pretty finite group of places. Obviously, we're talking about a city of 8.5 million people. If we were our own state, we'd be the 12th largest state in America. It's a much bigger job to get to that kind of ubiquitousness that you're discussing. I think what we've done is to have a huge number of locations, literally at various times, over 1,000 locations have existed at one point or another in New York City, plus all the mobile units. And we found real success with that. I do think the incentive is going to add to that success. I do think parents getting their kids ready for school is going to add. So I think to be clear to your question, Yehudit, we are going to be doing more and more mobile because we like what we've gotten with that. But in terms of having a lot of fixed locations, where at some places we're not getting a lot of traffic, I don't think that's the answer. I think it is a lot of mobile, a lot of showing up where people are, a lot of grassroots promotion, working with nonprofit organizations, and things like this new incentive and the back-to-school drive. I think that's where we're going to have the impact.
Last question for today goes to Abu from Bangla Patrika.
Hello, Mayor. How are you?
Good, Abu. How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much. Mayor, I would like to ask you a question about the concert that the city is organizing. I mean, since every, data showing the corona is rising, so when, thousands of people is going to come to, watch the program or participate, how are you going to monitor them, whether they are vaccinated or they are not vaccinated? How the city is thinking about it?
Yeah. Abu, everyone's going to be screened for vaccination when they arrive at the 5 concerts. We're going to be, we've been explicit from the beginning that if you want to attend one of these amazing concerts, you got to be vaccinated. That's going to be amplified every step along the way when people get their tickets, et cetera. And then when they show up, they have to provide proof of vaccination. And I want to be clear, because again, the topic came up yesterday. If anyone uses a forgery of a vaccination card, that's a crime. It's a formal official instrument. If you forge it, that's a crime. It actually comes with a potential penalty of prison time. So I want to be really clear with people. If you want to be at one of these concerts or do so many other things that require vaccination, just do the easy thing. Go get vaccinated. Get a vaccination card. Use the Excelsior Pass. Use the new NYC app that'll be out next week. Have that proof ready, and a lot of doors are going to open for you. Go ahead, Abu.
Okay, the second question is the people who are vaccinated as well, they are infected. Though it's a low quantity of the people. The city does it have any kind of data that the people who are vaccinated, how many people, or what percentage of the people they are infected?
I could not get that question clear. Hold on. Percentage of workforce vaccinated. Thank you. I'm sorry. Abu, again, what we know is it varies by agency. And we have some agencies where we got to do a lot more, and that's why these mandates are going to help us a lot. We also know that we have imperfect information, and we got to work to somehow overcome that because a lot of people got vaccinated on their own or even in other parts of the state. Some of our public employees live in New Jersey, got vaccinated there, so we don't have as good information as what we'd like. What we do know is some agencies have had a very high level of vaccination, some much lower, and that was one of the things that motivated us to go to mandates for all city employees. And I'll conclude there and say this, everyone. Look, again, let's be really appreciative today that we're on the verge of 10 million total vaccination doses from day one. We're on the verge of 5 million New Yorkers having received at least one dose. The reason this city is coming back strong is because the vaccination effort worked. But now we got to seal the deal, and we got to fight back the Delta variant. That means more vaccination. That means using every tool we got, climbing that ladder, constantly adding those tools. And yesterday, Dr. Choksi and I, Chancellor Misha Ross Porter, we were at Lehman, and we saw 2 young people being vaccinated, and it was 2 more steps towards a solution. It was very powerful to see these young people perfectly ready, perfectly happy to be vaccinated. They equate it with the ability to get back to their lives and their friends. I want everyone to think that way. If you want to live life to the fullest, get vaccinated. If you want a recovery, get vaccinated. If you want to live, get vaccinated. It's as simple as that. Thank you, everybody.